trainers had a copy each, and the administrators. So we have the book in school, but this is a PD that is ongoing. And we want to thank Dr. Murray for really pushing us to do this under pressure, I can say, because we are still moving towards our certification in December. What is SWEL is a teacher-driven approach creating systemic supports for English learners to remove barriers and create equity for all learners. And all learners we emphasize because the students who have difficulties are not only ESOL students, they are all learners who have difficulties. So this is going to help a lot. Okay, the teacher leadership cohort that we have, we're proud to say that's the first in the county. And these are the team members. You'll be reaching out to them. We tried as much as possible to have all departments, but it didn't work out that way. But we have a good representation from ESOL, science, English, math, financial literacy, and so on. So we'll be your coaches for this year and next year and ongoing. TESOL International was here for 1 week to train these people. And we are proud that SWEL is fully supported by administration. We want to say a big thank you to Dr. Murray, who was there all days, the admin, vice principals, Mr. Pryor, Mr. PD, Mr. Whelan, Ms. Cox, Dr. Mendeville, Mr. Peabody. Whenever they could jump in, they came in and we were in session together up to the last day. We are going to be focusing today, let me go back here, on building teacher disposition for effectively and respectfully servicing English language learners. And these are our objectives. We try to tailor these objectives to meet academic language objectives driven from content. And this is going to be ongoing, and we need to have a school culture on developing language objectives from our content from our standards. So those three go together: standard, content objective, language objective. So our objective today is to explain key elements of the SWEL model using key ideas of teacher development such as disposition, skills, knowledge, and coaching with the support of word prompts. That's our content objective. Our language objective to describe situations in which the lack of familiarity, sorry for that error, with a given culture created misunderstandings or confused communication using a digital think, pair, share approach with the support of sentence frames and using a variety of tech tools, which we're going to have in the course of the presentation. Okay, you can use the chat to express what you notice about these objectives compared to more traditional objectives. What are your noticings? Just in the chat. Yes. Anyone? They begin with verbs. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rowe. They address culture and understanding of culture, which is the big deal with servicing these ESOL students. Any other person? What do you notice? Especially with the second objective, thinking about social emotion now.
Yeah,
thank you, Jacqueline. Language scaffolds. Language scaffolds. Words are underlined and they are even in color. That is something we should be looking at. Why are they in color? Some are expressing the language support you're going to give, like the green color. There are going to be expressions to think, pair, share. There are going to be tech tools in the purple color. So you can equally make your objectives look like this. So students are referring to something, they know something is coming up in relation to that. Okay, let us move. What is the necessity of professional development to support language development across the school day? We all know that when the English language is the primary vehicle for teaching, then all teachers are language teachers. So we need to be on board with all students, even those who cannot say good morning in English. We also know that it's necessary because academic language is imbued with social capital and should be available to all students and all learners at all times. And this is a quote from the book. If we have the expectation that our students talk and write like scientists, historians, mathematicians, it is our responsibility to teach them to do so rather than assume that they will understand and somehow infer from mere exposure. Exposure is not enough. How to use structures and content specific words. This is going to be content by content. If I'm a history teacher, I need to be teaching that content with support from language objective. So SWEL has some key elements to it. The key elements are distributed leadership, or what Dr. Murray exposed at the beginning of the year, distributive leadership. Everybody matters in the line of SWEL. Everybody matters. Once you are exposed and you have the strategies, you can equally become a coach. You can join the team. The direction and implementation from the SWEL coaches, not administration. So the SWEL coaches are going to approach you. You're going to buy into it because it's kind of mandated to us. We need to do certain things by our end of year reaction from Maryland State Department. So we have that knowledge that, hey, can we do something extra school-wide? SWEL coaches are not out of school coaches that come with some tension. They're your colleagues, they're your classroom teachers, and the SWEL coaches need to be doing the work alongside with those that are supporting them, you and I. The SWEL coaches lead PDs like we're doing now, and there's one-on-one coaching for teachers, and we have admin support because TESOL International said if admin is not there to see what is going on in these PDs, they are not able to support. And thank God all of them were there. Okay, making Northwestern SWEL. My co-presenter is Ms. Quinones, one of our ESOL experts. She will roll from here.
Hi, everyone. I am Mrs. Quinones. For those who do not know me, I am part of the ESOL department. I've been here already for 2 years, and so I'm glad to be here. So first of all, making Northwestern SWEL. Before I go on to speaking about making Northwestern SWEL, I would like us to just take a moment, take a second, and picture yourself inside your classroom. Think about your periods of class with your class full. Your kids are there, and you have your content, and you're giving your class, and you are actually applying. Kids are in their classwork or doing their independent practice, and everything's going well. Nonetheless, there's 1 or 2 students that are just playing with their pencil, or perhaps they're looking towards the side, or you know that they're not getting it.
Let me query that.
This is what's perhaps we're thinking. Maybe there's a situation going on with our students, and we know this kid, and we know that this kid is probably Not understanding. Not understanding the content, maybe not, but maybe he does if it were in his language. Maybe he's having trouble with the language. Now, as subject area, the question that you may ask yourself is, what strategy can I use? Because, for example, this is my science class. I know my science, I know my content. I feel that I'm getting towards my students, but how do I create a strategy or a lesson or an activity that can probably make these 2, 3, 4 kids in these classes engage and understand what it is that I'm trying to teach? That's what SWEL is all about. SWEL is all about you having access to teachers inside of our school, teachers just like you, who are working on our goals, who are working, trying to figure out e-doctrina and all of the crazy stuff that has been put on us during this year. So SWEL is about you having contact with peers that can perhaps share with you some insight, and you as well, right? Some insight in terms of how to work and engage these English learners. And knowing Northwestern, we have a population of English learners, even though they're not in the TESOL program. So having said that, I go back to my slide. Hopefully you've thought, and I pretty much am sure that Carlitos or Pedrito or Maria or perhaps Owen, right, that doesn't know or is not understanding my class. And you know in your gut that it's the language barrier. Okay, so making Northwestern SWEL, perhaps it's the way to go. So as our slide says, limited PD for everyone to learn more about the SWEL elements and general support for English learners. So SWEL is going to give the opportunity, right, for supporting not only the ELs, but also the rest of our learners as well. Bullet 2, you will have the chance to participate in SWEL coaching process once you learn more about the process. Obviously, that's what I was talking about, having that opportunity with your colleagues. It doesn't have to be only us, the team. It can be colleagues that you most trust that probably you're doing this already. Sure enough, I have already encountered colleagues on my floor that have approached me and have asked me, Quiñones, can you help me out with something? And I'm like, what's up? And they look and they show me, for example, a letter or something that has to do with their class, and they feel that the student has made a mistake, but the mistake is not actually about content matter. It's more cultural. So they come up to me and we're able to actually interact. That's what participating and coaching process is about. Bullet 3, your learning through SWEL coaching can be used as part of your professional growth goal. That's a plus. We have to we're in the process of creating our personal professional goals. So perhaps you want to think about your expectations for your classroom. Maybe you want to engage this year in trying to learn more about how to deal with English learners inside of your classroom. Okay, so that's why SWEL is pretty good, we believe, for Northwestern. Mr. Tarke?
Yes.
Thank you. So, are you sure you didn't miss one? Did you miss one?
Oh,
I don't know if it was a chat. No? Okay. Oh, I think I answered this. Why is it important for NHS to engage in SWEL? Think about our CSI goals, right? We have some SMART goals that we have to address. And in order for us to actually be successful, engaging in learning on how to better our instructional practices for our English learners is the way to go, right? So how would this be important to engage in SWEL? Bullet 1. The MSDE will walk in to observe and assure themselves that SWEL strategies are implemented in classrooms. Don't get stressed. When I read it, it's like, what? Whoa, 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 whoa. They're going to come into my classroom. It's not about that. It's about us as a school following the laws that we have to address and service students that are English learners. So it's not only a policy, it's not a rule, it's actually the law. So having said that, we will be doing what has to be done by engaging in SWEL. Help teacher in evaluation and professional growth, obviously. And how do we proceed with SWEL? Teachers are already doing great with using strategies to assist all struggling students. We know this. We need more impetus to improve our daily practice by peer observation, teamwork, one-on-one coaching, share SWEL in all departments meetings, PD Wednesdays, etc. And if we have your input on other ways that we can try and find time, which is the hard part, right? Find time in order for us to talk to each other and not be in our caves, right? Talk to each other and see what we're doing. It will be good. There are 3 domains of teacher development. I believe, Mr. Tarke?
Mm-hmm. All right. You want me to roll?
Should I continue?
Oh, that's fine. I can
Okay,
continue.
good. Yeah.
All right. We have these 3 domains, and they are very significant to us. And we all have dispositions. If we didn't have dispositions, we would not more be teaching in Northwestern. The light bulb there shows that we have disposition. We just need to foster this disposition, impart knowledge as we're doing, and develop more skills to respectfully and honorably serve those students that come to us with lots of traumas, with lots of immigration issues, with a huge gulf of knowledge that they lack in the English language. We're going to expand on this. What do we mean by teacher knowledge? Teacher knowledge is already there. You have the knowledge. Teacher knowledge is the mastery of your content of instruction. If you're teaching a particular area, do you understand it? Are you teaching algebra or trigonometry? You have a mastery of it. Teacher knowledge is capital, and it all ties up to your skills, your strategies, your disposition on how to handle this delicate group of students. We have that knowledge. We can expand on it with more strategies that SWEL is providing. The teacher skills. The teacher skills are the ability to apply pedagogic knowledge in the classroom with strategies, connecting standards to learning targets, connecting standards to language objective, designing effective assessments, formative and summative assessments, setting up developmentally appropriate classroom. What does this mean? How do you progress in a graduated manner with your curriculum? And how do you differentiate so that those students who are having some difficulties are developing in the classroom the way you set it up by modifying and accommodating instruction? Those are teacher skills. No one can come in there and say you must do this. You know how to do it. And the hard part is the disposition. The Council for the Accreditation of Educators defines teacher disposition as the habits of professional action and moral commitments that underlie an educator's performance. This is a more recent definition of teacher dispositions. What are those habits that you have that are inherent from your training, from all your interactions? And what are the moral commitments that you have that can enhance teaching and learning in your class, making the environment conducive, accepting the child as they come into your class, but moving them from point zero to point five? We still have this. That's the key of the presentation, but we are going to focus mostly on disposition. Not because skills and knowledge are not important, that will be object to subsequent presentations. So we're looking at dispositions. What are those habits? And what are those habits that we may have that we need to shove away, that we need to say, hey, this what I've been doing for 25 years, let me just tone it down and work it a different way. Our dispositions so effectively and respectfully serving English learners. The researchers came out with 6 dispositions that we need at all times put together in order to respectfully and effectively service English language learners. And to me, it's all about all learners, not only English language learners, because we need disposition to deal with Johnny, not Johnny Gomez, who is jumping around the class all the time. We need some real stamina to withstand certain things and move them towards learning rather than say, hey, get out of my class. Number 1, educators empathize. And someone said it in the chat. It's all about social emotional learning. Empathize with circumstances related to immigration. It's not of their choice. It's not of our choice. We just receive them in Hydesville the way they come, from where they come, without stigmas, without prejudice. We need to empathize. That is the big word in that disposition. We're going to talk more about that. Educators need to be more culturally sensitive and sustaining. They come with a baggage of cultures and dressings and the way they approach you that may not be the American way. You have to be sensitive to that without necessarily saying, hey, I don't welcome that, because that's what they've been doing for 14 years. There are 15 years. There's a gradual process to handle those cultural differences. Educators believe that marginalization and oppression affect the educational experiences of English language learners. Talk to them, hold those conferences. They will tell you thrilling, sad stories that you will use in order to be able to better service them. Rather than say, hey, you're ESOL, try your best, they will not survive. We have almost 900 ESOL students. Subtract that number from 2,400 or so, we're going to lose at least 50 positions or more. So we need them. They need us. Educators support their students' home language development. This theory is being expanded more and more. If they can express something in their home language and you translate, that is good and fine. You cannot shove away their home language. Their home language is the vehicle to English, no matter what that language is. That's why you can request dictionaries and more support, translators. Allow them translate. Educators recognize the challenges of learning English and content simultaneously. This Italian teacher opposite my door when we were in the hallway. I asked her to teach me some expressions in Italian, and I forget the next day. So those challenges are there. The repetition. Uh, those that languages are closer to English will pick up English faster, but Vietnamese and English, they have two different grandmothers, so they don't meet anywhere. So you need to have different strategies to accommodate those students in your science class, social studies, and everything. Educators are committed to ongoing professional development. That's what Ms. Quinones was saying, and that's what SWEL recommends. The ongoing professional development, whether it's in the departments or uh, PD Wednesdays, that is something we need to be doing. Now, we have a reflection, completing the disposition reflection. I'm not really sure what the disposition is saying. Someone was asking in the chat, we need to dive more into this. This is where we're going to talk about it. Miss Rebecca, can you put that in the chat? I understand the dispositions, but I don't know if it is relevant or needed with our students. I believe I have this disposition, but I'm unable to identify direct decisions because of it. I have this disposition to deal with ELLs, and I know it influences some of my teaching decisions. That's number 4. Number 5, I know this disposition influences many of my teaching decisions. That is the person who is a guru. He knows or she knows that I know what to do with my ear. So if you rate yourself at 1, 2, or 3, then we'll compile that and see where we'll support. Or you are at the top, you are already one that would like to dialogue with you and say, hey, join our SWEL team. Thank you. Is that in the chat already? Can we give a few minutes?
Yes, it is,
It's in
Mr.
the
Park.
chat.
Yes,
Yeah, let us
sorry.
give 5 minutes.
It's in the chat. Let's give them, give you guys at least 4 or 5 minutes to reflect on our disposition. Are we, yeah.
And this is going to be a working document for the team and admin, and it will shape subsequent PDs. If we know that 80% of the staff range between 1 and 3, and then we have work to do. And this is ongoing. We're not going to unravel all of SWEL strategies this year. We will do what we can do, not to overwhelm people, as Yvonne said.
But then again, Mr. Tarke, may I add, we're planning every day at all time. We plan during our day, but when we come back home, we're planning. And we always remember those children that need that extra help, those children that are struggling. And it hurts us, as teachers. We want to address them. So feel free to reach out, reach out. And that's what SWEL is about, like finding that person that you click with. Finding that person that could give you that little input. And we'll see how it goes. You should feel better in the sense that that you're addressing the situation. And we're guiding ourselves towards making not only our children's, our ELs, all our students, but ourselves as well. Because we know that we're addressing the problem. Sometimes not like when we reflect on a daily basis how our children are doing in our class, it's always like in the back of our head. I know it's in mine. That kid is right there in the back of my head, and I know that he's in this hole. So perhaps we can help you to try and figure out how to get him out.
Thank you, Ms. Quinones. There is something I want to emphasize. Those 10% of students, or 5% or 2% who don't do work, and they come to school, it's a coded message to us. They're telling us something. They're sitting there, they're not doing anything. So those are some of the students we need to seriously talk with and dialogue with, talk with the parents. It may just be a language barrier, and they're overwhelmed, and they're not seeing the support coming. It's okay, no problem. I'm not doing your work. They may be going through lots of things that they don't see doing work as anything that's going to help them come out of their dilemma. And they have a lot. Not only ESOL students, mainstream students who come to school, good attendance, work not bad. There is something, if you predispose yourself to good dialogue with them, things can change. They want people to have them receive with open hands.
Can I add something?
Yes, sir.
Something really quickly, John, I'm sorry. Can you all mute, please, if you're not speaking? Because somebody's beautiful children are having a great time. So please mute. I'm glad to hear their voice. Please don't mute me while I'm talking. Just like I don't want you to mute John when he's talking. But please mute, okay? Remember, I have the barking dog, and as soon as you all hear barking, I will mute. She's quiet now and asleep. But so please mute, okay? It's really important. John, go ahead.
No, I've got ninth graders this year, and like a lot of people in a lot of classes, I'm seeing kids that are quiet and not even responding when you call on them, and I'm seeing some kids that are not turning in barely any, if any, written work, and you assume that kids are shy and they need it, and that some kids are just not motivated and I need to work on it. And that's true, but I'm starting to notice that possibly some of these kids, it's a language problem.
Yes, it is.
I found something that I had them fill out the first day. I started going over it. What's something else you want to tell me? And one girl wrote, I don't speak English very well. So I'm like, wait a second. That's why she's not answering when I'm calling on her. That's why she hasn't turned in much work. So I think we should try to be aware of this, that it's not, we want to assume that it's laziness or something like that, but it could be really a language problem that needs to be, either they need to be in a different class, or we need to like think of strategies so that to include them in things like when I'm talking all the time or when I'm showing a video or something, that they may not be getting a lot of that.
Can I just say something, please? Ms. Pitt, can I just say something, please? Hello? Can I just say?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, yes. So, yes, as I can't remember his name, but just spoke, he said that it's a language barrier, and as an ESOL teacher, I know that as a fact, because I'm trying to teach them English. And if I don't speak Spanish to them, even though I speak English back and forth, Spanish back and forth, they would not respond and they get shy, they withdraw. And I think that's a big, it's an area that we need to work on very strongly to get them. Don't take it as either they don't know or they don't want to work, they're not cooperative. It is the language barrier. It's really, and I'm supposed to be teaching English, and I find myself speaking Spanish 90% of the time, and I know it's an area I have to work on and correct. But newcomers, beginners, it has to be, we got to find a solution to that problem and work on it. So I support.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Thank you, John.
I did the same thing, actually. Coming from teaching social studies, we asked the students a lot of times to make a comparison to either a historical event or what's going on with the government, and coming from their backgrounds, they have a lot of interesting comparisons that really lends itself towards not only instruction, but interest. But unfortunately, we do kind of run into that language barrier. They're not as the efficacy in terms of them wanting to speak out. And then with that population being teenagers, they don't want to be ridiculed or seen to, So I was just asking, actually, if there was some type of technology that could help with, like, some type of like CC it or closed caption or some type of translation that when you speak, we have the monitors in the classroom where they can kind of see it'll translate into Spanish and then vice versa. So I'll look into that as well.
I have a question. Hello, colleagues, Dr. Rael. I'm listening to everybody. I'm listening to the SWEL presentation. I guess my question and concern is when we are faced with students that may be challenged with the language, but we also have that student-wide goal, that CSI goal of promotion. How is it that we are able to judge effectively that they are meeting the curriculum, that we know that they are struggling with the language, and then trying to meet that particular goal in terms of the promotion rate? That's my concern, and that's my wondering. Does anybody have an answer, or how can we address that?
I would suggest that meeting a promotion goal, even if they're in 12th grade, there is need for differentiation. There is need to accommodate them and take them where you meet them. There is need to go into their CUME folder if they have some special needs, and then help them with that. For ESOL, generally, most of them, there's use of bilingual dictionary. Be it online or physical dictionary, we have tons of dictionaries in the building. And if there's a crucial case that you think that needs my intervention, we will come and talk with them and get the information. You already conference with them and say, hey, this student has this background and they're not fitting in my 11th grade class. Or they are in ESOL intermediate, but they cannot write 3 words. They are not supposed to be there. Like a student I identified in Mr. Williams' class, he cannot even speak, and he's in U.S. history. That's not possible. Yeah. We're working with the counselor to bring that student back. After all, he's from middle school. He loses nothing beginning with language or social studies, and then learning the vocabulary to move on. So, Dr. Real, some students just have that difficulty, which may just be linguistic. Okay, it can be handled. Differentiate instruction, break it down, rewordify the task you're giving them. Don't change the standards. If they're doing compare contrast, you stick with your standard, and then you differentiate.
Okay. Sorry.
Guys, I'm going to ask you all, and Dr. Real, to answer your question, we're going into formative assessments next session today. And formative assessments will help you determine where students are. John said 2 things earlier. He said sometimes the kid's not placed correctly, and that is a reality. Not for every student, but if you're using formative assessments, can provide the data to show that maybe this kid isn't placed correctly, then that's an action we'll have to take. He also talked about differentiating using strategies to support students, because there are students who are correctly placed, and that's where those strategies will come in, okay? So thank you guys for that. I want us to move on though, because they have a lot of great information to share. Okay.
Okay. I think we've completed that document. That's working document for us, and we will be using that. And you equally see the reactions. Disposition number 2. Ms. Quinones, can you roll?
Of course. So about the form that we just addressed and completed, we will actually look at that form, make sure that we utilize that form in order for us to move forward towards our next PDs, depending on the necessities that we have as a school, okay? So now in terms of disposition, now I want us to focus on our own. Like we already did like our reflection while we were speaking and letting things out, right, with our questions and our answers just a second ago. Nonetheless, can we move to our next slide, Mr. Tarke, please? Yes, thank you. So what I would like us to do is consider something. Just like I said at the beginning of our presentation today, let's take a moment to actually reflect in our classroom. I want us to take a moment to reflect on ourselves personally and consider this. When was a time when you were limited by your language or knowledge about a subject? For example, when you have to file taxes and you sit with an accountant and starts probably saying words that you're totally oblivious to, right? Perhaps, let me think. Sorry. In a mechanic, how many times do we go to an auto mechanic and we don't know, right, the gibberish the technical words, right, that perhaps that mechanic is saying. Believe me, when I came here 2 years ago to Northwestern, my personal experience with all of the applications and the platforms that we use here in PGCPS, there were so many times that I felt limited by the language and by the knowledge in order for me to actually show, right, and complete a task. So I want you to consider that. And I want you to ask yourself, how did you feel when that happened? What did you do? What did you react how was your reaction to that lack of knowledge at that moment, right? And how did the knower, right, respond to the lack of understanding? So how did that other person that you were trying to communicate to react to that lack of knowledge or that lack of language that you had, right? So take a moment, and we will be placing a link to a Jamboard. And in this Jamboard, we want you to actually respond as best you can to these questions. So I am going to ask if it's okay to Ms. Baum to place it in the chat, and if not, I can do it as well. And
I just
yes.
want to add that the examples are given from a perspective of a mechanic or a medical diagnosis, where you are not a knower. We can equally be responding, looking at it from the perspective of that student who is in front of you, who does not know, and all they say, I don't understand, no comprendo. And you are the knower. You know. You are the master in the subject, and you have experience. Even if you are just from college, you've done some internship. How do you handle such situations where those 5% in your class are just there and they don't know what you're doing, and there's something that will hurt their feeling or make their feeling look comfortable?
Were you able to access the Jamboard?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mary, is your hand up?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so
There's
yeah.
too many people. There are too many people on it, so we're not able to access.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay.
There are currently too many people viewing this file. Please try again later.
Thank you. Exactly. And we can always, jot something down on a pencil near us so that we can react to it in a couple of minutes.
Right.
I think 5-10 minutes can do. Yes, Mr. Tarke, 5 minutes.
Oh, we lost some time to get more insight into eDoctrina. I don't know whether we don't want to get into people's lunch. That's not my decision, but
sure.
We just have to go a little bit faster. You can complete this when the traffic is clearer, because it's a working document and it's going to be shared.
It could be done later.
Can we proceed? I think
Sure. Yes.
Yes, go ahead and proceed.
All right. Okay. Now we need the help of Lady Miss Kara Jones to get us into breakout rooms.
Yes, because what we want to do now is, again, placing ourselves in that situation of having students that perhaps are struggling with the language, struggling just to communicate, not only thinking about our content, even to just share what they are feeling in terms of their struggling. So having said that, we're going to we're going to watch a video first of all, and we're going to be placing you in breakout rooms for us to discuss something. Okay, so after watching a clip from Benegas TEDx talk, now Miss Michelle Benegas is one of the authors of the book from SWEL, and she was so kind to be with us last week during the evening. So she has a very interesting TED talk that we want to share with you. So please fill in the blanks with examples of not knowing from your teaching experience. Include how you felt and how you reacted in each situation. When it is time to share, include anecdotes about how you learned these lessons. Now, when we watch the video, this will make more sense, okay? So just give us 1 second. So shall we continue, Mr. Tarke, with the next slide so that you can probably click?
Okay. We'll be watching the video right now.
I believe so. If everyone is ready.
I hope internet does not fail us.
So without further ado, to bring culture back to the U.S., I introduce Michelle Benegas.
Órale, manita, ¿qué onda? ¿Viste el chico nuevo tan guapo que es? Mira, ¿quién es esa güera ahí? Ahora, papá, guapiana hai. Reka se ye hai. Nata aranta yete hai. Hey Mom, it's me. I made it all right. I survived my first time on the city bus. I'm still so mad at my professor for making me come here. I mean, how could she think that I belong here? And I need to be here for like 30 hours. Oh, sorry, I gotta go. We'll talk later. Bye. You know those defining moments when your reality takes a sharp turn and the trajectory of your life is forever changed? Well, this was one of those moments, and that was me. I could have never known when I stood in front of that freight elevator of an old warehouse turned into a high school of downtown St. Paul that my identity was about to undergo a major change. Now, I didn't choose to go to this high school of all immigrants and refugees. My professors sent me there saying that there were no other options for me. And I can't tell you how it happened exactly, but I grew to fall madly in love with the work of educating immigrant and refugee students. It could have been when I noticed how they looked at me and trusted me, not only as a teacher of the English language, but as a sort of kind bridge to the cold, white world they found themselves in. It was a feeling I had yet to experience in my 21 years of life, and I felt myself brimming with joy. And as I began this story with a pivotal moment in my becoming a teacher of refugees and immigrants, I'll share more pivotal moments with you. Some of them are shocking and sad, and others illuminate the joy that I have the honor of feeling as a member of this unique and wonderful community of transnationals. In my time there, I grew. My 30 hours quickly turned into 90. I pursued a second teaching license in English as a second language, and I stayed there for 5 years. I thought I would never leave. And while my students illustrated struggle for me in ways that I had yet to imagine, they also embodied strength, resiliency, and appreciation. I learned about affection while being surrounded by glittering hijabs, having my hands and feet painted with henna. It felt so special to be taken care of by Somali women. They put musky perfume on my wrists and offered me treats like sambusa and buskut, a rosewater flavored biscuit. I learned about compassion. When my student's grandmother died in Cambodia, the Catholic nuns that operated the shelter where his mother lived orchestrated a beautiful Buddhist funeral. I wept in awe of these holy women and how they honored diverse ideas about God and the afterlife as they offered final respects for a woman they had never met. I learned about respect when I held day-old Hmong twins in the newborn intensive care unit, careful not to touch their heads or compliment their physical beauty, both of which in traditional Hmong culture wish evil spirits on the child. And I learned pride when I cried in elation at my students' graduation. My time in this warehouse shaped me in so many ways. I learned to experience my city from a vantage point that wasn't only white and privileged. I learned to be a fascinated foreigner at home. However, I often worry about the cost of my cultural education there. My students paid the cost. My knowledge about people who looked differently and lived differently from me was severely lacking, and they bore the brunt of teaching me what I needed to know. I often questioned why I hadn't been prepared to face such difference in my teacher preparation. My struggles were outside of pedagogy or teaching and assessment. They were about culture, poverty, and war. There was so much that I didn't know. I didn't know. Fingernails pressing into my back as I hurried down the stairwell, sirens blaring from a fire drill, my young Afghani student reliving life in a war zone as she let out high-pitched wails and gripped my back. I didn't know about post-traumatic stress. I didn't know when my young Latina student asked me to translate for her meetings with the social worker, and her graphic accounts of sexual assault at the hands of a coyote fell out of my mouth. I didn't know the dangers of border crossing. After a few weeks away, I came back to school, and that same Latina student was waiting for me at the top of the stairs, peering down at me through dark sunglasses, arms outstretched, wrists bandaged. She said, "Miss Michelle, where were you? I needed you!" I didn't know about the fragility of undocumented youth and how they would depend on me. I didn't know. When my Somali student told me she had her period, I noticed that she was sweating and her eyes were rolling back into her head, and I took care of her as my mother would have taken care of me. I helped her lie down. I offered her a blanket. The principal called 911. I didn't know about female genital mutilation and that FGM can cause toxic shock syndrome, and that toxic shock syndrome can be fatal. I didn't know. When my once poised and well-dressed Ethiopian students started coming to school wearing the same clothes every day and smelling of body odor, I noticed she hadn't brushed her teeth. Years later, at a women's conference, she presented on her time as a homeless teen in St. Paul. I sat in the audience and was overcome with shame. I didn't know the signs of homelessness. I didn't know. When my once high-achieving 12th grade Mexican student started failing to submit homework and doing poorly on tests, I worried about her, and I asked her to sit down with me. I asked her what was going on, and I'll never forget what she said in reply. She said, "Miss Michelle, I love school. If I graduate this year, I can never go to school again. I didn't know about the barriers to higher education that some of my students faced. I think about all of these experiences as part of my teacher preparation. I developed a critical consciousness. I learned to bring the diversity of my classroom village into my curriculum rather than placing it on top of it, as I learned to interact and teach my students in culturally relevant ways. Now I reveal this young, immature, and bigoted version of myself, not just to share my personal journey, but to stand as an example of teachers in our nation. We know that in the United States, about 80% of our teachers are white, and in the state of Minnesota, it's about 90%. This does not reflect our student population. And I know that I'm one of hundreds of thousands of educators who entered the classroom ill-equipped to meet the diverse needs of my students. So the question that plagued me in my early teacher formation is the question that drives my research today. It is, how can we best prepare teachers to meet the socioeconomic and cultural differences that they'll face in the classroom? That is, how can we help new teachers not to commit the same cultural crimes that I did that hurt kids? I recently conducted professional development at a local school district, and I spoke with a faculty of teachers about topics like culturally relevant teaching and cultural competency. And following the workshop, a group of teachers approached me, and they said, "Thanks for the talk, Michelle, it was great, but our community is different. Our immigrant families just don't care about their kids as much as the local families do. They don't even come to conferences." Now, I'll be honest, I needed a minute to let that one settle in. This comment, it came from a place of not knowing. Not knowing that in many cultures outside of the United States, the teacher is regarded as the master and would never be questioned in an environment like conferences. Not knowing what it's like to get a letter home from your child's school in a language that you can't read, asking you to maneuver public transportation that may or may not bring you to your child's school. In the state of Minnesota, we have 65,000 English learners, speaking more than 200 languages. St. Paul Public Schools is our district with the most students labeled limited English proficient. They have 13,000. And our state ranks 15th in the nation when it comes to language diversity. However, by some measures, we have the second to worst achievement gap or opportunity gap in the nation. We can do something about this. Let's start by getting to know our newcomers. Teachers, if you have a new student from Bhutan, take it upon yourself to learn about the Bhutanese. Why have they left their home country? Why are they coming here? And what are some pieces of cultural information that you need to know to best meet their needs? This is your duty. Share with them what you know and ask questions. Administrators, be intentional about offering your faculty opportunities in professional development in areas such as culturally relevant teaching and cultural competency. Have critical conversations with your teachers about topics such as equity and diversity. And departments of teacher education, push your candidates out of their comfort zones and into environments rich in cultural diversity. This is a challenge, but it's imperative. I challenge all of you to take these steps. Let's support our newcomers in their pursuit to lead lives that are successful, joyful, and safe in this new place they call home. Thank you.
So as we continue, my question to you is, what is the takeaway, right? What do you take away from Mrs. Benega's Tech Talk?
With MailChimp, you can create more engaging emails.
There was a common denominator and a repetition of some words during and throughout the whole presentation. Can anyone recall what that was?
I didn't know.
I didn't know. Thank you, Miss Virtue. I didn't know how many times, right, she discussed with different situations, right, from her students, and things that had to do with the personal lives of her students, and how she did not know, right? And it was so overwhelming that at the end she lets us know, she shares with us, right, how not knowing about all of these situations, she guided her students through a path, right, throughout her class, through a path that perhaps could be hurtful to them, that perhaps would not be the best way to go. So was it her intention, Ms. Vanegas' intention to do that?
No.
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 Exactly not. Just like ours, I would gather. Our intentions are always there to help our students, to guide them. Nonetheless, perhaps that common denominator, I don't know. There are many things that we don't know. So if we don't know, what should we do? What should we do?
I would say take some time to get to know the students.
Yes.
That's what I do. Like yesterday, for instance, I learned that one of my kids has a kid in Guatemala, and I took like 5 minutes and I talked to him and I learned so much about him. So not knowing for me is just an excuse. You can always sit down for a while and talk to the kids.
Thank you, Mr. Piñero. Yes, and I see that breakout rooms are in our plan for today, nonetheless, respecting that we only have, I think it's 10, 11, 12 minutes. Perhaps we can take these 5 minutes to follow Mr. Piñero's thoughts, right? In terms of expressing, right? Expressing perhaps personal experience of not knowing. Or what you gather in terms of getting to know our students. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Would it make a difference when you get to know your students? Think about what happened to Ms. Venegas. She did not know how one of her students had been in a war environment, and just the trigger of a fire drill set her off. So, you know, we have to reflect on that. Do you think knowing our students is going to make an impact on how we teach them and how we plan for them as teachers?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sometimes we're gathering academically, but is it only academically that we have to think and reflect on?
Can I say something?
Please do.
Okay, I struggled with teaching a student in my class for a while because he just wouldn't communicate, and I wrote emails, and until I had Miss Quinones talk with him to discover that he does not communicate in English at all. He knows no English. So we're taking it from there to see what is the best way to help him succeed at Northwestern.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams. And definitely that is what SWEL is all about. Just like what happened to Mrs. Adams, where she's knowing her student, right? She actually noticed that he's not communicating at all in English. So fortunately, I'm her classroom neighbor. So she comes to me, and since I'm a Spanish speaker, I assist. So we take it from there, as Mrs. Adams said. So the idea is exactly that. We're already collaborating. And that's what SWEL is about. Finding that person, that one person that can help you through any anxiety or any something that you don't know. Yes?
There are two hands. They're
Two
raised,
hands.
Dr. Murray. And
Yes, thank you. Ms. Park and Dr. Murray. Ms. Park, please.
So for the cultural background, so we don't know. I don't know about the Latino cultures as much as other teachers. So whenever any cultural things is popping up or any pregnant students that is not really common in this culture and that young age, I really actually explicitly have a moment to have a conversation about the cultural differences in class with the whole group. Not all the topics is a proper to discuss in group, but I make a quick judgment that can I open that up to the whole group and talk about it, and that way that make the students feel more comfortable with sharing their cultures. It's not just hiding because it's minor or they are minority. It's just have them feel like a reciprocal learning moment. From me to knowing the Latino cultures, from them to learn American cultures all the time.
Exactly. That is what, when I'm talking about not only academics, learning about our students stands for, Mrs. Park. Thank you so much. Learning about the culture of our students as well. Dr. Murray, you wanted to say something, and then
no,
Dr. Bean.
This is just a great conversation. I put my hand up a long time ago about muting, but it's okay. This is a great conversation, so I'm going to be quiet. I'll go continue.
Thank you. Dr. Bean?
Can I say something?
Yes, let me unmute myself. Okay. I had a student early in the year and he was missing lots of days. And so I talked with him and he explained to me that he had to babysit because his mother had to work and that they had a babysitter that was coming, but he had to do it until then. And so I told him that's fine and I will give him his work in the Google Classroom and he could contact me in the evening and I'll help him with his work. And then, like Ms. Park said, I opened it up to the whole class and said, if you're having some kind of problem, whether it's normal in America or not, you can come and talk to me. And I noticed that with that particular student and all my students, it makes a difference. And they do feel comfortable now coming to me and having those types of conversations.
And Dr. Bean, obviously, if they feel more comfortable with the teacher, most likely they will strive, they will try their best in order for them to do better academically. Mr. Olo?
Yes, I have a student, beginning of the school year, he was doing very well. All of a sudden, I noticed that he sleeps during the second period. When he comes in, the first thing is lay his head down. So one time he came to me, he told me that, Mr. O, I'm from El Salvador. My parents don't speak English. I have to be catering for them. I have to be the one who provides for the family. And that's kind of touching. We don't know some of the students, what they face in their houses, right? And that's very sad.
It is very sad. And following up on him, Mr. Olo, you may be the only person that actually has followed up during that day. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference. And as I said before, it will probably reflect on his work as well, because he will feel a connection towards you.
Okay.
Yes.
May I say something?
Okay.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Thank you. As a professional school counselor, I'm telling you, it gives me great joy just working at Northwestern High School and connecting with our scholars. I have a lunch thing that's going on. Every lunch period, I see certain students, And I'm telling you, the bond that we're building, that when I was out sick last week, I received an email stating that the students went to my office and was told I was sick. And they said, please feel better and come back because we miss you. And I'm telling you, it was so sentimental, it touched my heart. Having those conversations during the lunchtime with my scholars, I was talking one-on-one with an individual, and she said, I just throw something out. And she said, Miss Austin, is it noticeable? Because she was wearing the same clothes every day. And she didn't say anything, but I picked up on it. And I wanted to make sure that if I do a care packet, it's okay with the parents. So I reached out. Dr. O and I collaborated and did what we have to do with vouchers and things like that. But please, if these students have any problems, send them to us. We can help. You know, and while you're doing a dynamic work in the classroom, a lot of our students are hurting so deeply. I mean, I come home with it and I feel like I said I'm their grandmother. I mean, I'm not that old, but I just think that I'm their grandmother. But they need because I've walked in their shoes, and until you walk in someone's shoes, that empathy has to be there. So yes, when we see them not skipping school, not coming in, there's a whole lot of circumstances that beyond their control that they can't even prevent. They just want to survive, and they need us. So working at Northwestern High School, I mean, it's an eye opener. I love it. And I said, I wish people just let me do what I do because I'm a people person and I just love loving everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Austin Sam. Yes, Mr. Tarkin.
Yeah, we need to progress and people to go for their lunch. This is a very powerful discussion. I want to say that most of the teachers here who are ESOL, it has happened once in a while in your career that you cry with your students, that they tell you certain things. Like in 2006, back in the trailer, those trailers have been moved to where I was out there after teaching Martin Luther King. The students had to write an essay. A student threw me off writing an essay that was totally unrelated with Martin Luther King. I have a dream. This student wrote about, that student was from Liberia, how they raped her mother in front of her, shot her after she was hiding in the bush, and seeing that she was traumatized. And I could see that reflecting in her class. Sometimes I give work, she will not do it at all. But she wrote a powerful essay about an incident that led to her coming to America under the refugee program. How do you know? How do you approach them? I was just sharing in the chat, we need to create a period and talk with these students. They're sitting in front of us. It's not like everybody is virtual. Create a breakout room and talk with some of your students. You will be surprised, and you may take them differently. It is Minnesota, as she was explaining, is one of the herds that has the highest number of immigrants from around the world. Not number numerically, nationalities. So it's so mixed. But paradoxically, 90% of the teachers are white. How do you respectfully, with compassion, handle that? If you don't accept them, you cannot even handle them. Because there are teachers who don't accept those kids. So we are going to end in like 5 minutes. If that's, we went a little bit above our time. There is a parking lot information there. Question you may have about SWEL, please fill it in there. We need questions. We need reflections, especially when you go to the beginning elements of this presentation. Things you may wonder about SWEL.
Excuse me, Mr. Tarkin?
Yes.
Hi, it's Rebecca. I'm going to put the parking lot in the chat, the one, not the Jamboard, since not enough people can get into it.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Information you want to know. about teaching ESOL students.
Mr. Tarkey, if I may, I have just one question, and it could go in the parking lot, but it's a little bit more specific. So, when you started, you talk about school-wide English learning.
English learner.
SWEL.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, what does that look like specifically? Because to me, it's a little bit vague about how we'll do it as individuals. How we'll do it as individual teachers? Is it just like up to everyone to try to incorporate SWEL, or are we going to kind of have it more structured where you'd say like the specific department, we're going to all agree to implement a specific ESOL English learning strategy, and everyone in the department will use those one or two strategies, or like all ninth grade teachers or ninth grade English teachers, you'll agree to use these two specific English learning strategies, like you'll use cognates and you'll probably use modeling, and all 10th grade teachers, you'll use repetition and substitution. I'm a structure person, and it's kind of vague to me in my head. I know all the concept and I understand everything that you say, but if I don't have like a specific way that I can implement it in the classroom, I tend to hear it and then I tend to dismiss it once I leave the meeting, because I don't know how to, I mean, I understand what we do as a teacher. You're not exclusive to just good instruction, but to implement the whole school-wide, the focus on SWEL, what are we going to do specifically, department or school-wise, that will be held responsible for doing?
Thank you. We are going to do almost all of the above that you mentioned by department, school-wide on PD Wednesdays, but we are going to be strategic. We're equally going to focus on specific classes that have a huge number of ESL students. Dr. Brother has that data for us, so that the coaching does not just flex its muscle on 200 plus teachers. You are not going to achieve much. But for a start, one of our last slide was good content and language objective transforms your classroom completely. We are not going to watch those videos. You watch them on your own. And it's going to help you understand how to craft your language objective before we even get to that PD. So I am just, it's all there. I think everyone has access to this PD. Just do your best to watch this last slide. The first one is 2 minutes. The second one is like 6 minutes. Your content objective trickles down from your standard that you're working on that week. And please put it on the board. If someone comes in, your content objective, language objective is there. If they're from the state, they say, oh yeah, I know this was part of SWEL. Your whole day is visible. Even after you leave the class, keeping it for tomorrow is still visible. We are going to develop another PD on this. To be more precise, the coaching is going to be one-on-one. It's going to be whole staff. And some of you may just volunteer and say, I'm joining the SWEL team. The principal has promised that if we have more members and we want to telework sometimes from home and work with on a PD or particular teachers, she is ready for that. And this culture is one that we've been doing already. So it's important for us to get it really, really underscored in our practice. We are the first school in the county. So any SWEL certified person among the team we have, or a coach that joins us later, that is big in your resume. You can directly apply for a coaching position in your content area in the county using this only. You are already in the coaching model. So we are going to do all of that, but it's going to be gradual. We are not overwhelming anybody. Teachers have just a lot to do. We will walk into classes. The coaches can email you We have 3 teams here amongst all the presenters that we have. We created 3 teams. They'll be hatching the action plan, and we will go with that. These team members here are divided into 3.
Ms. Harkey, sorry, I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's 11:40, and lunch started at 11:30. Guys, I appreciate it so much. You all did a fantastic job, but I want to honor your time. So we're going to adjust the agenda. It's now 11:40. We will return at 12:40. 12:41 now, okay?
I appreciate that, Dr. Murray. Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you all back at 12:41. Thank you so much.